Beijing is one of the world's largest cities with over 21 million people, but it's seriously lacking in drinking water. With 100 cubic meters of water per person per year, it's actually one of the most water-scarce cities on the planet.
Beneath the surface of Beijing, a metropolis of 21 million people, a silent crisis is unfolding. The city is running out of water and the very ground is beginning to collapse. But what if you could solve this by moving a river? Not around a city, but across an entire country.
More than 1 billion cubic meters of water has been supplied to North China from a reservoir in central Hubei province in 6 months' time.
This is the impossible mission China undertook, embarking on the largest water diversion project in history. How do you engineer a river, and what does it truly cost to change the map of a nation? China's water paradox. The ground is sinking beneath one of the world's greatest cities. Beijing, a megacity of over 20 million people, has a silent, slow-motion problem. For decades, everyone has relied on water pumped from deep underground. But those ancient hidden lakes are running dry. With the water gone, the earth is compacting and collapsing. The city is quite literally falling in on itself. Venture outside the capital onto the vast North China Plain. This is the nation's breadbasket, a region that feeds hundreds of millions. But the land is parched. Cracks run through the soil like spider webs. Farmers watch the skies, hoping for rain that seldom falls. The wells their families have used for generations are now just dry holes. This entire region, home to a quarter of China's population, is running out of water. Each person here has access to a tiny amount of water each year, far less than what the United Nations calls a water scarcity level. Life is a daily struggle against a disappearing resource. Now, take a journey south. Travel over 1,000 kilometers to the heart of the Yangtze River Basin. Here the world is drowned in water. The city of Wuhan is known for its humid summers, where torrential rains can flood streets in a matter of minutes. The Yangtze River, a mighty brown giant, carves through the landscape, carrying an unimaginable volume of water. It surges with power, dumping billions of gallons into the ocean. This is a landscape of overwhelming abundance, of lush green mountains and overflowing lakes. This is China's great contradiction. From orbit, satellites capture this stark divide, the lush green south versus the brown parched north. NASA's satellite imagery shows the contrast in a single frame. One half of the country drowns while the other thirsts. It's a problem written into the very land. A map of the country tells the story. A staggering 80% of all the country's fresh water is here in the south. But over 60% of its people, its factories and its precious farmland are up there in the dry north. The water is in the wrong place. For centuries, this was just a fact of life. But as the North's crisis deepened, this old fact became an urgent question. How do you fix a problem this big? How do you solve a crisis that spans a continent? For a nation that built the Great Wall, the answer was both simple and breathtaking. If the mountain won't move, you go over it. If the river is in the way, you go under it. And if the water is in the south, but the people are in the north, then you move the water. Not just a little bit, you move a river. This became a national mission. The answer is the South-North Water Diversion Project, the largest and most complex water transfer system ever attempted. The scale of this idea is hard to grasp. This is not just one pipeline. It is about re-engineering the plumbing of an entire nation. The project is a giant web of waterways stretching across China.
China's water diversion project is so huge, it takes days to drive it.
It is divided into 3 separate colossal pathways, called routes. There is an eastern route, making its way up alongside ancient canals. There is a western route still in the planning stages, tackling the high frozen mountains of Tibet. And then, there is the central route. This is the heart of the project, the first great thread to be woven across the map. The story of the central route is one of pure human determination. It is a concrete river, an artificial waterway stretching an incredible 1,400 kilometers. That is a distance longer than the entire length of Great Britain. The most amazing part? This entire journey from the reservoir to the tap in a Beijing home is powered by gravity alone. There are no giant pumps pushing the water. Engineers have designed this entire pathway to have just the right slope, a perfect, gentle downhill run all the way to the north. It is a testament to incredible planning, a man-made river flowing steadily to quench a nation's thirst. This is the story of how they built it. Raising the Dragon's Dam. The Danjiangkou Dam sits at the confluence of the Dan and Han rivers in Hubei province. This location was chosen because its elevation, 162 meters above sea level, would allow gravity to carry water all the way to Beijing, 1,432 kilometers north.
Solve the high water pressure and the base of the dam from eroding, engineers had to install a huge grout curtain on the base of the dam.
This colossal structure is the beating heart of the entire central route. It holds back the Han River, creating a vast man-made lake that stretches to the horizon. All the water that will begin the long trip to Beijing starts right here. But there was a problem. This heart, as mighty as it was not strong enough. To save the north, it needed to pump more lifeblood. The solution was as straightforward as it was difficult. The dam had to grow. Engineers needed to raise its height by 14.6 meters. But how do you make an existing dam taller? It is not like adding blocks to a toy tower. This was a massive, solid concrete structure from the 1950s. The challenge was fundamental. Getting new concrete to properly stick to old weathered concrete is one of the toughest jobs in engineering. It looks simple, but it is not. Think of it like trying to glue two smooth sheets of glass together. They might seem to hold, but the bond is incredibly fragile. It has no grip. Now, imagine that fragile bond having to withstand the immense pressure of billions of gallons of water pushing against it. A weak bond would be a catastrophe. The entire project and the safety of everyone downstream depended on solving this puzzle. The engineers did not have to start from scratch. They found their inspiration in a story from across the world, from the Sierra Nevada mountains in California. There, a century ago, an engineer named Michael O'Shaughnessy faced a similar problem. He had built a dam.
This is the O'Shaughnessy Dam. It's 131 meters tall, 277 meters along the crest. When it was completed, it was the second biggest dam in the world.
But soon the growing city of San Francisco needed more water. He needed to make the dam taller. But O'Shaughnessy was a clever and forward-thinking man. He suspected his dam might need to grow one day. So when he built it the first time, he did something extraordinary. He built the top of the dam not as a smooth, flat surface, but as a series of giant, rough steps. This was a stroke of genius. Those steps were the key. When the time came to add new concrete decades later, the workers did not have to pour it onto a smooth, slippery surface.
Joining the old and new concrete together was the dam engineer's biggest challenge. And like the O'Shaughnessy Dam, the secret was to increase the bonding area.
Instead, the new concrete was poured into and over those giant steps. This did one crucial thing. It dramatically increased the surface area where the old and new concrete met. It was no longer like gluing glass to glass. It was like fitting a key into a lock. The steps created a powerful mechanical grip, interlocking the two sections into one much stronger whole. It was a simple idea that solved an impossible problem. Between 1935 and 1938, San Francisco raised the O'Shaughnessy Dam by 85 feet using this technique. Back at the Danjiangkou Dam, Chinese engineers prepared to use this same brilliant principle, but on a scale O'Shaughnessy could never have imagined. Their dam was not a small structure in a mountain valley. It was a giant stretching across a wide river. The first step was to prepare the old dam's surface. Workers used high-pressure water jets and machinery to blast thousands of deep grooves and notches into the face of the existing dam. They essentially created an artificial rocky cliff face out of the old smooth concrete. This rough, scarred surface was perfect for a strong bond. Next, a forest of steel began to rise. Workers drilled thousands of thick steel bars, called rebars, deep into the body of the old dam. These bars stuck out upwards, waiting like a skeleton. When the new concrete was poured, it would flow around these bars and into the deep grooves. The steel would act as an internal reinforcement, a kind of steel sinew, tying the new structure securely to the old one. The new dam would not just be sitting on top of the old one, it would be woven into its very fabric. becoming a single, unified, and much stronger structure. Then the pouring began. For years, a constant stream of concrete trucks fed the growing dam. Slowly, meter by meter, the dam climbed skyward. It was a painstaking process, requiring immense precision and constant checking. After 4 long years of continuous work, the task was complete. The Danjiangkou Dam stood taller and mightier than ever before. Its reservoir could now hold an additional 12 trillion liters of water. The heart of the system was now powerful enough to supply the north. The first and most crucial obstacle was overcome. The water was ready to begin its journey, but the path ahead was filled with even more incredible challenges. Lessons from the Canal Age. The dream of moving water, of telling rivers where to go, is not a new one. Long before modern engineers drew their plans, ancient empires were already mastering the art of redirecting nature. To understand the sheer ambition of China's project, we must first look back to one of the original masters of waterworks, the Roman Empire. The Romans faced a similar problem to modern China. Their great cities needed a lot of water, and the local sources were not enough. Their brilliant solution was the aqueduct.
The majority of the channels built by the Romans for their aqueducts are underground. A mere 5% of the 500 kilometers of channels.
These were not pipes, but beautiful, massive stone bridges carrying water channels at their very top. The Romans understood something fundamental about water. It is a stubborn traveler. You cannot force it to go uphill. It must be coaxed along a gentle, continuous downhill path. Their secret was an incredibly precise slope, a gradient of just 0.02%. This means for every kilometer the water traveled, it dropped only 20 centimeters. That is barely a slope you would even notice while walking. But it was perfect. It was just enough to keep the water moving smoothly, without rushing so fast that it damaged the channel walls. Achieving this was a monumental task. Teams of surveyors would work for months, using simple but effective tools like water levels and sighting poles. They would chart a path across valleys and hills, ensuring that perfect drop was maintained every single step of the way. It was a masterpiece of patient, clever engineering. That same principle of a gentle, gravity-fed slope is a golden rule that still guides engineers today. But China did not need to look only to Rome for inspiration. It had its own epic history of moving water. While the Romans built elevated rivers in the air, the ancient Chinese were digging a horizontal one into the earth. This was the Grand Canal, a colossal waterway linking Beijing in the north to Hangzhou in the south. Stretching an almost unbelievable 1,700 kilometers, it was the longest artificial river in the world.
At 1,794 kilometers long, it stretches from Zhejiang in the south to Beijing in the north.
Building the Grand Canal was a project that spanned centuries. It was dug by hand, by millions of laborers. They moved mountains of earth with little more than shovels and baskets. The canal had to cross rivers, navigate lakes, and find a path through ever-changing landscapes. It was more than a ditch. It was a complex system with locks to raise and lower boats, and embankments to control flooding. For generations, it was the backbone of the empire. It was a superhighway for trade and communication. Barges laden with grain, silk, and timber moved up and down its length, binding the nation together. It allowed the wealth of the wet south to sustain the political power of the drier north. This was a project on a scale the world had never seen, proving that China's ambition to reshape its waterways was deep in its DNA. So the story of water engineering has 2 great chapters. The Romans mastered the aqueduct, lifting water over obstacles with breathtaking precision. The Chinese mastered the canal, moving it across unimaginable distances with sheer determination and organizational genius. These were not just construction projects, they were declarations of human capability. They proved that with enough will and wisdom, the geography of a continent could be rewritten. Today's South-North Water Diversion Project is the grandchild of these ancient marvels. It is about fusing that Roman genius for gradient with the Chinese ambition for scale. Modern engineers are standing on the shoulders of these ancient giants. They have new materials, concrete and steel, and new tools, computers and satellites. But the core challenges are timeless: how to maintain a slope over a vast distance, how to cross treacherous terrain, and how to move a river without breaking its flow. They are using timeless wisdom to tackle a modern crisis on a scale those originators could never have imagined, but whose spirit they would undoubtedly recognize. The concrete river. This channel is one of the few modern structures genuinely visible from space. Astronauts aboard the International Space Station have photographed it. A thin blue line cutting 1,432 kilometers across northern China. That's the distance from London to Rome.
The central route stretches over 1,400 kilometers. The water flows at 420,000 liters per second.
Unlike the Great Wall myth, this is verifiably visible from orbit. The journey of the water north from the dam is anything but simple. It does not flow through a natural riverbed. Instead, it travels along a brand new man-made waterway. This is the channel, a concrete river carved directly into the landscape. Imagine a canal so wide and so long you could barely see the other side. This is not a small ditch. It is a giant, constructed river. Over 1,000 kilometers of this channel had to be dug by hand. Well, not by human hands, but by the hands of the largest machines ever built. The amount of soil and rock they moved is almost impossible to picture. It is enough earth to bury a major city. This was one of the biggest digging operations in human history. But digging a big ditch is not enough. The real challenge is all about the slope. The entire system works by gravity. The water has to flow downhill all the way to Beijing. The engineers had to create a perfect gentle slope for over 1,000 kilometers. The gradient is incredibly precise. It drops only a few centimeters every kilometer. This is so slight that you would not even notice it walking alongside the channel. Why does this matter so much? Get the slope wrong and everything fails. If the channel is too steep, the water rushes forward like a runaway train. It gains too much speed and energy, crashing into the sides and eroding the concrete walls. It would tear its own path apart. But if the slope is too shallow, the water becomes lazy. It moves too slowly. It would just sit there, stagnating. Algae would grow and the water quality would be ruined. So the margin for error is tiny. A mistake of just 1 meter over 100 kilometers could cause a disaster. The water must flow at a perfect and steady pace.
China's south-to-north water diversion project will move 45 trillion liters of water per year along 3 routes to northern China.
To achieve this, crews used giant bulldozers and excavators, but they also relied on incredibly precise technology. GPS guides and laser leveling systems make sure every single section of the channel is perfectly aligned. This is not rough construction, it is surgery on the landscape. Now the land is not flat. The water's path runs into deep valleys and wide rivers. The channel cannot just go down one side and up the other. So how do you make water cross a valley? You build a bridge for it. These incredible structures are called aqueducts. They are not for cars or trains. They are bridges designed to carry millions of liters of water. The Shai River Aqueduct is one of the longest and most impressive. It spans 12 kilometers, carrying water 40 meters above the ground. It is a giant concrete channel held high in the air by massive pillars. It looks like a superhighway made just for water. Building something this big is a huge puzzle. Each section of the aqueduct is enormous, weighing as much as a dozen trucks. They are too big to transport from a factory. So, the entire aqueduct must be built piece by piece right there on the site. Engineers use giant custom molds to create each section. They pour concrete into these molds, let it set, and then move the mold to create the next piece. The shape of the channel is a wide, smooth U. This is a brilliant design. If the aqueduct were a square box, the water would push hard against the sharp corners, creating stress points. The U shape has no corners. The force of the water pushes evenly against the curved walls, spreading the pressure out. This makes the structure incredibly strong and allows the water to flow smoothly without turbulence. But a project this vast cannot be managed by people running along its banks. This concrete river has a brain. Hundreds of kilometers away in a quiet control room in Beijing, a team of technicians watches over the entire system. Their computer screens show a digital map of the entire route, from the dam all the way to the capital. This is the digital nerve center. Sensors placed all along the channel send back constant information. They report how fast the water is flowing, how deep it is, and the water quality. The technicians see the health of the entire project in real time, and they can control it with the push of a button. All along the route there are special gates. These gates can be raised or lowered to control the flow of water, just like a tap in your home. If a section needs more water, a gate opens. If there is a blockage downstream, a gate can close to prevent a flood. From this room in Beijing, technicians can operate these gates remotely. They make constant, tiny adjustments to keep the water moving at that perfect, steady pace. It is a symphony of water and technology, all conducted from a single room. So this is not just a ditch in the ground. It is a living, managed system. It is a concrete river carved with immense power and guided with incredible precision, carrying life northward. Tunneling under the Yellow River. The concrete river flows north, a triumph of human effort, but ahead lies its greatest and most dangerous challenge. This is the Yellow River, China's second longest river. It is a giant, a powerful and unpredictable force of nature. Its name comes from the enormous amount of yellow silt it carries, 1 billion tons of soil every year. This silt makes the river unstable, constantly changing its course. For the water diversion project, the Yellow River was the ultimate roadblock. The entire system works on gravity. The water has to flow downhill, from a high point in the south to a lower point in the north. But here, there was a huge problem. The land on the other side of the Yellow River was actually lower. To go over the river, the water would have to flow uphill, which is impossible without massive pumps. But using pumps for such a vast amount of water would be incredibly expensive and unreliable. The elegant, gravity-fed system would be broken. So the engineers faced a seemingly impossible choice. How do you cross a river without going over it? There was only one answer. The water had to go under. The decision was made to tunnel beneath the mighty Yellow River. This was the most daring part of the entire journey. They would create a secret passage, a water tunnel deep under the riverbed. Building a tunnel under a river is hard. Building one under the Yellow River with its soft, shifting silt and immense water pressure was a nightmare. The engineers designed a brilliant solution. Not one tunnel, but two, and each tunnel had 2 layers. Each tunnel is 9.3 meters in diameter, wide enough to drive 3 cars side by side, and runs 70 meters below the Yellow River's bed. Think of it like a very strong straw within another strong straw. The outer lining of the tunnel is a thick shield of concrete. Its job is to withstand the incredible crushing weight from above. It holds back the entire weight of the riverbed and the water of the Yellow River itself. Inside that, there is a second inner lining. This inner tube has a different job. It must contain the powerful force of the water rushing through the tunnel from the south. But what happens if the outer tunnel springs a tiny leak? The pressure from the river could slowly damage it. And what if the inner tunnel leaks? The project's precious water would be lost. The solution was a safety gap between the 2 tunnels. This space between the linings contains a special drainage system. If any water ever seeps through from either side, this system collects it and safely drains it away. It acts like a relief valve, a brilliant failsafe that protects both the tunnel and the river above from disaster. Digging this tunnel was a dark and difficult job. Deep underground, massive machines called tunnel boring machines, or TBMs, did the work. These are colossal mechanical moles, chewing slowly through the earth. The operators of these machines lived in a world of constant noise and vibration. Down there, you lose all sense of time. There is no day, no night. The world is just the deafening roar of the machine, the smell of damp rock and oil, and the dim glow of work lights. The only thing that matters is the rock face in front of the machine. For years, these crews moved forward, inch by inch, meter by meter, in a race against time and the immense pressure of the river above them. The twin tunnels took years to complete, with breakthrough finally achieved in 2010. They were the human moles, digging a path for a river. And then, after years of relentless effort, came the breakthrough. On the far side of the Yellow River, the giant cutting head of the boring machine finally broke through the last wall of rock. Light and fresh air flooded into the tunnel for the first time. The moment was electric. Engineers and workers who had spent years in the gloom cheered, embraced, and cried. The emotion was overwhelming.
Construction site of an underwater tunnel across the Yangtze River, located in Wuhu City, East China's Anhui province.
It was a mix of relief, pride, and sheer exhaustion. The path was finally clear. The south and the north were now connected by this incredible underwater passage. The water from the Danjiangkou reservoir could now flow unimpeded. It would pour into the entrance of the tunnel, dive deep beneath the mighty Yellow River, and emerge triumphantly on the other side, continuing its long journey to the north. This great dive was the project's crowning achievement, a masterpiece of engineering hidden right under the feet of one of the world's great rivers, the human tide. This incredible engineering story is not just about moving water. It is about moving people. It is about changed lives and personal sacrifices. For every canal dug and every tunnel built, there is a human story. Before the first concrete was poured, approximately 330,000 people learned they would lose their homes. The expanded Danjiangkou Reservoir would flood entire valleys where families had lived for generations. This relocation happened in two major phases. First during the original dam construction in the 1960s, then again in the 2000s for the expansion. These were not volunteers. They were told to leave. They were relocated to new towns built on higher ground. These new communities are modern with clean apartments and running water. But for an older generation, the change is deeply felt. A grandmother might tend a small vegetable garden on her new balcony. She remembers her old home, the one now deep under the water. The soil in her pot does not smell the same. The air feels different. There is a quiet sadness, a sense of loss for a world that is gone. People here speak of sacrifice. They moved for the greater good, for the millions of people in distant cities who needed water. Their old homes are now part of a giant lake, a sacrifice for the survival of the North. But alongside the sacrifice, there is also immense pride. Think of the engineers who dedicated years of their lives to this project. The woman who helped raise the dam by 15 meters now stands looking at the enormous lake it holds back. She does not just see water, she sees a promise kept. She remembers the years of worry, the fear of failure, and now the overwhelming feeling of success. It is a quiet pride, a feeling that her work will echo for generations. The tunnel operator who spent years in the underground gloom can now drive a car through the completed tunnel. The air is cool and clean, and lights line the walls. It is hard to believe this was once a cramped, noisy, and dangerous construction site. For him, this is not just a tunnel. It is a part of his life, a memory made of concrete and perseverance. These engineers have left a mark on the country that will last for a century. They have not just built structures, they have built a future. A new balance. For a generation, the people of Beijing and the North China Plain lived with a slow-moving crisis. The water was disappearing. Wells ran dry. The very ground beneath their feet was sinking. But now, something remarkable is happening. The data tells a new story. The data tells the story. Since December 2014, when water first arrived, the project has delivered 76.7 billion cubic meters to the north, enough to fill 30 million Olympic swimming pools. Beijing's groundwater table has risen for 8 consecutive years. The dangerous subsidence that threatened to sink the city has stabilized in most areas. The underground reservoirs are slowly refilling. The dangerous land subsidence, the sinking of the city, is beginning to stabilize. In the vast agricultural regions, farmers see a more secure future. The project's primary goal is being met. Today, the project supplies water to 185 million people across 45 northern cities. Beijing receives about 1/3 of its water from this source. Water, the source of life, is flowing to where it is needed most. The great thirst of the north is finally being quenched. But a project of this scale is never simple. It is a balancing act. While the north benefits, new challenges emerge. In the south, where the water is collected, some rivers now flow more slowly. This change can affect local ecosystems and communities downstream. Moving and treating such an enormous amount of water also requires a massive amount of energy. The question of long-term sustainability is always present. This is not a perfect magic solution. It is a monumental intervention, a way to correct a deep and ancient geographical imbalance. It is a response to a crisis, with its own complex consequences that must be carefully managed. So, what is the true legacy of this concrete river? It is more than just pipes and pumps. It is a new geographical feature, etched into the very heart of the country by human determination. It is a permanent mark on the land, a testament to what humanity can achieve when faced with a fundamental challenge. From space, that blue line is visible across China's landscape, a permanent scar or a lifeline, depending on who you ask. It carries 76.7 billion cubic meters of life north every decade. It stopped Beijing from sinking into the earth. It gave 185 million people reliable water. Did it save the north? The taps run. The ground holds firm. For now, that's answer enough. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.